Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show, it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Ozark Season 4, Episode 7, the mid-season finale, the final season Part 1 finale, whatever you want to refer to it as. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, first and foremost, obviously, this episode isn't what I thought it was, because I thought we were going full circle from, like, the beginning. I thought that's where things were. It's like, nope. So, whatever that stuff is at the beginning, that, like, foreshadowing in the future thing that's going on, is something that's going to happen in part 2. Now we know, but I was like, oh, I thought after last episode, I was like, oh, the time framing and everything, I'm like, oh, the deal's going down. I guess maybe they did that on purpose to mislead you. You thought this was going to be that car crash scene? It's like, nope, this is something else entirely. So that was really interesting. But basically, they're making their deal with the FBI. And I love the FBI was like, double birds to you, because your whole thing, no. Navarro, you want to just walk away? Actually, no. We're going to make it so that you stay with the cartel for 5 years, and then we will potentially revisit this conversation again. Like, you can get an immunity deal and get what you want, which I love that Jim's like, can is a really interesting choice of words, because I'm like, yeah, that leaves a lot. That's a lot of wiggle room of like, can. Oh, we never promised you we would. We said that we could. Very important wording there. So, and Navarro's just kind of like, cool, so and he's like, oh, guys, they want me to kill my own nephew and pay for the privilege. I'm like, oh, I love that line. That's such a good line. And it's like, I mean, he can't back out now, because Javi's going to be like, wait, you gave me the keys to the castle, now you want to take them back? Wait, what? So he's kind of stuck in a hard place, and it's like, right, this isn't what we had dealed on. And even the fact is that I love that Maya's like, wait, what are you doing? This isn't what we agreed upon. And it's like, basically, it's that bigger picture conversation, because she's like, no, we're supposed to be taking down one of the largest cartels. And her boss is like, well, what'd you expect? You thought, like, oh, this would end the war on, like, drugs. It's like, no. Someone else would step into that void. At least this way, we can control it and stuff like that. Which also, like, Maya's making it clear, like, oh, but also the money that you're getting from all these seizures and stuff, that doesn't hurt either. Like, you don't want to mess up your cash flow. It's like, once again, dude, I think it's always so interesting when, like, stuff tries to, like, makes it perpetuate, like, when you get dirty law enforcement, they're pretty much their own gang. That it's like, yeah, but once again, it's the justification of the bigger picture of like, right, like someone else is going filling that void anyway, so why not let it be someone that we're in control of? He gives us the ins and outs of his operation. We won't come after him, and in that five years, we'll revisit this conversation, which is like, because Marty and them are trying to have the conversation. Hey, no, this is good for everybody, like. Because obviously no one wants to, well, not this particular situation, but later on try to spin it, because it's like, right, this whole entire thing, like, will hurt their bottom lines, their pockets. So, it's just kind of a thing, everyone's got to grit their teeth and accept it. So, obviously, because even Navarro's like, I know, even in 5 years' time, they will fuck me. They will try to fuck me again. And it's like, yeah, they'll probably renege on the deal, try to be like, just do a little bit more time. They'll always be continuing to move that goalpost. And even Wendy trying to be his advocate, be like, all right, a year. And we revisit it, but it was like, so. With all said and done, Navarro accepted the deal. About to roll up on the airport. The lights start blurring. I'm like, wait, did the FBI try? Wait, was this all a trap? And then Maya rolls up, and I'm like, oh, and she's kind of glee about it. I'm like, what? Oh, cool. Maya went full road, because even her boss is like, the reason why we didn't tell you is because you're misrighteous. And the fact of the matter is, now it's not even about that. I'm just telling you, now that you do know, I'm telling you to fall in line. It's like, yo, but Maya didn't. Because despite everything, despite the line she's blurred, it has been for like, no, we're doing good. But like, she was banking on us taking down a very, very bad guy. I even love that line from that head honcho dude being like, basically like, oh, mass murdering like drug cartel guys like you should basically be gracious for our mercy, essentially. Like, whatever we give you, you should be happy we're giving you that mercy, because we could be doing a lot worse. We could go after you in other ways and come at you super hard, like pop you if we need be. But no, it's for the best for everyone if you stay. And Maya went rogue, and it's like, especially because the birds were so happy. They're like, oh my god, yes, we're getting to go home. Oh, everything's working out. Before the ink was even dry, Maya was like, fuck that. Taking Navarro down in the most public way possible. And it's like, everyone saw it. You're like, oh boy. Oh boy. And even later on, I love her mom is like, even her mom is like, what did you do? She's like, my job. Because her mom must have known some of the ins and outs of this for her to have that reaction. Two, it's like, wait, you took down a drug cartel dude? Like, aren't you worried? But it's like, Maya's like, no. I'm like, once again, if you flip the script of this show and make, like, just like I said, Mel being relentless, you would be like, hell yeah, Mel. Maya being like, no, I'm not going to compromise. I'm going to do the right thing. Hell yeah. But because it's this show and I'm Team Bird, I'm like, damn it, Maya, why'd you have to fuck this up? Once again, it's just like, it's all about perspective on things, And I always like that. Like, I like that it's like, yeah, I constantly find myself cheering for, let's face it, Marty and Wendy, they're bad guys. They're a part of a larger issue. Like, yes, they're the lesser of the evil, but man, they've gotten their hands bloody, they've gotten their hands dirty, both directly, indirectly. They're a part of all of this, sure, but it's still, I don't care. I'm still siding with them because the thing is, I want their family to come out of this okay. Will they? We'll have to wait and see. But I'm cheering. I'm Team Bird all the way. And I'm not saying the show was designed to be that way. I might be siding with people being like, some people be like, nah, I want the birds to get what they want. Just because people flip the script on Walt. It's like, yo, when Walter White like did his thing, people are like, I can't side with you anymore. I kind of want to see some people. You were either, I want him to get away with everything, or you're like, I want him to kind of get what he deserves after all the terrible stuff he's done. I can't support him anymore. Like, up to a certain point, you justified supporting him. I'm like, nah, man, I was Team Walt all the way to the end. I know he did some super effed up stuff, but you're also talking to the guy that's Team Kira. That should tell you a lot about who I am. I'm just saying for the storytelling purposes, I always side with those type of characters. They're like, I shouldn't side with you, but I do kind of want you to get away from everything. I recognize you for being the piece of shit that you are, and that you've done some terrible stuff that you didn't have to do, but you justified it for being part of the greater good. That's a part of this whole conversation, and Maya doesn't see all this as part of the greater good. So once again, she's in the right in this situation, but it's also like, man, did you set fire to a lot of stuff. And the fact is, she's talking to Mel later on, and Mel's like, oh yeah, I'm looking into the birds, and he's like, I'm a fan. I'm like, yo, Maya's about to set fire to some more stuff. It's like, it's full-blown anarchy. Like, Maya's burning all the bridges. Dude, the birds don't even have her as an ally, because after that meeting, they have not been in the same, they were not in the same scene with Maya, because I think anytime he tried calling Maya, she didn't pick up. So yeah, she's cutting all ties to the birds. She's doing her own thing. So that's fascinating. It's interesting too, because before all this went down, Navarro was talking to Wendy, because he was like, oh, like, what I see in you is fear, going back to your old life. Because regardless of anything, once again, Wendy has blossomed during all of this. She enjoyed it. She loved it. And that's what Navarro latched onto her so much, because when he looks at their situation, once again, I've said it time and time again, making the comparison to Breaking Bad, she is the Walter White in this situation. More so than Marty. Like, they both represent, they can both be an amalgamation of their characters, could make up Walter White, but I definitely feel like the more criminal side of things, she definitely leans more towards like the whole Walter White, like getting shit done if need be. But Navarro sees a lot of himself in Wendy. He always has. And so for him, he's like, yeah, like when you're, basically when your kids are out of the house, and when, Marty's at his office, and you are like, the bottle of wine is empty, just promise me you'll remember me, you'll think about me, because it is like, yeah, because the normal life isn't right for you. Like, everything led you here, and regardless of everything what brought you here, you love it here, and are you really willing to just go back to some normal life? There's always going to be a part of you that enjoys this, the danger of it. She loves it. Once again, I think Wendy thrived under these circumstances. I think she'd even make the argument she would, but she'd never want to admit that out loud, because it's going to make it kind of make a lot of your choices questionable, and also make your family look at you like because Marty's whole thing has been like, let me get my family out of this. Once again, Wendy's the one that took that shovel and was like, no, 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 and dug their family deeper. So, and her, I mean, everyone kind of played their own role in that, but she definitely didn't help fill that that hole. She definitely dug more out of it, dig them deeper. But regardless, so thought that was kind of fascinating. Some other things are happening at the same time. Wyatt's telling Ruth, like, yeah, I'm getting married to Darlene. She's like, you're fucking with me. You're not fucking with me, are you? And he's like, I love her and everything. She's like, what about you promising to go with me? And he was like, I'd never wanted to. It's like, why'd you promise then? I'm like, is it just because he got scared, or is it because he thought like, no, this is what... I think he's lying at that. I don't know. Like, you could tell like he was shaking because it's like he was scared because the Ozark's all he's ever known. Like, life outside of that, it's like, this is my home. Like, where am I going to do? What am I going to do with my life? This is all I ever was. This is kind of all our dads ever were. This is all I'll ever be. There's no escaping this, you know? And maybe it's just purely an obligation out of Zeke that he's also like, right, I need to help Darlene. It's like, because the thing is, do you really love her? The woman... Regardless of what he says, the woman scares the shit out of you. Like, he can't deny that. Having to bury 2 bodies for her, but hey, the fact is he was willing to bury that second body means that, hey, I do love you in some shape or form, but I'm like, I don't know. Like, I think it is just because he thought it was the right thing to do, and also because I think maybe in some shape or form he thought like, right, I don't have any other options. This is all there is for me. Like, what am I going to do if I leave here? Nothing. You know, this is all there really is for me. So maybe he didn't see a future for himself. So he's like, I might as well make the best of what's here. But it's like, Darlene Snell, my dude, come on, man. Come on, Wyatt. And even she's like, what if the KC Mob found it? It's like, they won't find out about it. Like, don't the people know, or you and me? And she's like, yeah, but... It's like, oh, okay, so you're not going to let... I thought she was going to tell him at the end when she was like, can I at least go to a wedding? I was like, oh, I thought you were going to finally confess that you told Frank Jr., which she later on goes to Frank Jr. and is like, please don't kill her. But even she was shocked. Is like, well, why didn't you actually kill her? Like, why haven't you made a move before now? And he was like, oh, I'm going to. And it's like, he's like, oh, she figures like, oh, you don't want to murder anyone. You're not your dad. You're not like quick to... Like, he's like, no, like... She needs to, like, die. She shot my dick off. She killed my dad. She deserves to die. Which even Rufus was like, I ain't denying it. But my cousin, he's like, wait, who's your cousin? It's like, he's marrying her. Like, I can't let you do that. I don't want him to get hurt. Just let God and nature sort them out. And I'm like, oh. Those words, well, we'll get to it later, but those words will forever haunt Ruth. Let God, never mind, let nature sort her out. And so Frank was kind of reluctant, but she gave him the money, and I was like, is he going to do it? Because when the wedding happens, I was like, is Frank Jr. going to roll up and he's going to end up killing? Because 3 was at the wedding with Zeke, and I was like, is he going to like shoot up the spot not knowing like what was going on and end up killing Darlene but them in the process? Or is he just going to try and kill just Darlene, but like Wyatt gets him? I didn't know like what to make of it, so... She did go off and go to that lady to get some seeds and stuff, which I thought was interesting. I guess it's someone who knew her mom. It's like, yeah, it looks like your mom just spit you out. Is that, what about your dad? It's like, oh, he's dead. She's like, good, fuck him. You're better off as an orphan than like having to deal with that type of man. But it's like, yeah, obviously that was still kind of a sore spot for her, because even hearing that, it's kind of like, yeah, but she still wanted her dad alive, regardless of the garbage person that he was, you know, so... A lot of other moves are being made because your boy Javi is like, okay, so he's giving Marty 90 minutes because Marty's like, all right, he's panicking and freaking out. He's like, all right, give me time to like sort this all out. Wendy goes to the FBI because initially they were trying to go to him about like, it's like, cool, the deal you were going to give to Navarro, just give to his nephew. And you're like, no, we don't want to do business with him. And you're just like, no, this will be for the betterment of everyone. Like, the fact of the matter is, like, this way you could also get an extra bit of the pie. Like, come on, this will benefit you in the long run. So, but they were kind of like still reluctant on that front. So, but I love later on that Wendy kind of forced their hand later on, because it's like she was able to get Javi there. Granted, it was a wild way, because I guess the moment Navarro got arrested, Jim was like, yeah, because he was probably hoping that, like, he was hoping this Navarro thing would be able to go down, because if it went down, he wouldn't have to worry about Javi. But because it didn't, like, Javi is still going to be around, so I got to look out for my best interest. So he called him up, let Well, because Javi got to him first. Now, Jim did a good job of not talking about everything. So, sadly, he led Marty to a trap. The fact is, Jim's like, you got to come over and sign this. And they did. I was like, well, they're going to cut over to Javi being there. And he wasn't there. I was like, oh, maybe not. I don't know. Because Jim kind of acting freaked out like that. Like, oh, I need everything, all the ducks in a row. He's like, no, everything's legitimized. You don't have to worry about it. He's like, no, we're going to cross every T, dot every I, because I'm not going to jail for you guys. And so the moment he rolls up there, and I'm like, this is, and I was like, okay, so there's Javi. They just didn't do the cutaway because they wanted you to still be not sure. I was like, it seemed like a setup, but I was like, oh, the fact, because typically they would have immediately cut to Javi with a gun on him, like, oh, good, thanks. So it shows you that Javi's not a complete another psychopath, because the fact of the matter is that he didn't immediately kill Jim, because it's like, right, you are a lawyer, Helen's going, so why go through the trouble of, like, you are a good lawyer, so why go through the trouble of, like, trying to find someone else? So you're already here, you're already in our pocket, you're already scared of us, so might as well take advantage of. That way we don't have to put any work into working with any other lawyer, like getting some new blood in this. Like, no, you're already settled in to some extent. So proceeds to, like, scare the crap out of Marty. He's like, Marty, I'm gonna kill you. Like, this is, and he's like, right, like, come on, don't do this. We could sort this out. He's like, oh, no, get a bottle of scotch, we'll talk it out. Moment Marty gets up, pistol whips him again. I'm like, oh, did you really think he was gonna let you just, like, but he even said, what did he say? He said, like, oh, I'm gonna make a meal out of it. And he stretched it out just because he wanted to make a meal out of it. So, at the same time, Wendy made her, like, she talked to the FBI. She got a meeting with Navarro, and she's like, please do this. Hell, they even sent Charlotte to pick up Jonah. They're hiding at the cemetery with all the money, which that led to some interesting conversations, because she was like, come along. He's like, yeah, I'm not a part of this. She's like, Jonah, they're not going to care about our family situation. They will kill you for being a part of it. You're a family. They will kill you regardless. So they're hiding out. That leads to a whole conversation about, like, because she's like, are you really not going to come back? And he was like, yeah, like, what about, like, she's like, I get your issues with mom, but it's also like, she's like, because he's like, oh yeah, you're just like her. She was like, don't pretend like you're innocent and all this. You were that little helper from the beginning. Once again, the roles have been flipped, because she was reluctant, he was all about it, and now she's kind of about it, and he kind of isn't. But, you know, for her, it's like, you were the one that jumped on all of this because you had no friends in back home. So, like, you had nothing to give up. Like, so it didn't really matter to you, because Charlotte wants to go back to be reunited with her friends. The question is, like, is that ordinary life going to be something right for you anymore? I'd assume yes, because I think out of anyone, Marty's going to pretend. Wendy's definitely going to pretend like everything was going to be okay and that this normal life is going to be fine. But then you take something like Jonah, I don't think he's going to want to step back. But the question is, would Charlotte want to step back? Like, would she be able to fit back into normal life after everything that they've been through? She'd be more willing to. I think she probably would. But there's also a part of me that's like, I don't know. I think she would probably still. She's changed so much because of all of this, what they've experienced, what they've been through, that I don't know. She's still I don't know, it's maybe like 75-25 for me. 75, like, she could adapt back to normal life, but there's still like 25% of me that's like, I'm not sure she would. You know, but like, that family in general, I don't know how they'd handle quote unquote normal life after everything. But but I love that, like, he was basically like, oh yeah, you're just like mom or whatever. And she's like, fuck you. And he was like, see? She's like, I'm sorry, but it's just that, you know, he's like, when I asked you if you would ever kill me like mom killed Ben, your answer was, it's different. He's mentally ill. I was looking more for you're my brother. Of course, I'd never kill you. And she's like, you're my brother. I love you. I would never let that happen. I would never kill you. And he was like, oh, thanks. That's what I needed to hear. But it's also like, right, do you ever think about if they died? And she's like, yeah, I've thought about it. And he's like, and it's like, yeah, then we stick together. Like, she's like, I don't know, we go to like the Pacific Northwest and just, you know, get new names, live together. It's like, no matter what happens, if anything ever happens, then we're in this together. Like, you know, we have each other's backs. So, like I said, his biggest issue is with his mom. Doesn't doesn't get Marty off scot-free because of Marty's participation in a lot of stuff, but still, it's like, they're more likely to get killed, and it's like, so what happens to us? Which you're like, okay, is that foreshadowing, you know? And is this going to be a situation where, I mean, because I legitimately think, like, this is the type of show where, like, the entire family could get clapped, or it could be like, no, only Marty and Wendy get clapped, or, I don't know, man. Like, they're setting it up and make it seem like Jonah and Charlotte, but it might be the end result. Because even Marty went to Ruth and he was like, if anything ever happens to us, find the kids and run. And she's like, oh, I'm sure you'll be able to talk your way out of this. But he's like, promise me. And even Ruth saw that look in his eyes because despite everything, despite her ups and downs with Marty, she likes him a lot, regardless. And like I said, he was kind of the father figure she never really had with her own father. But I think it's also the aspect of like, right, like, I think there's a part of, right, maybe you are kind of scared that there's a part of you that's not even sure that you will not make it out of this. Like, so, all right, I'm going to promise you that because I do like you, and I also believe that you are scared that you might not make it out of this. I did love that whole DEFCON 5-1 situation. He was like, actually, DEFCON 1, she's like, it doesn't matter, they're all bad, and even at the end being like, why would DEFCON 1 be worse than DEFCON 5? I've never actually looked into it. I always got that confused in my head. I'm like, which one's worse? I'd assume it's supposed to be like a closer to 0 thing. Like, because 0 is when shit goes nuclear, and that's supposed to be like really, really bad. So I guess that's supposed to be, God, what's that clock? Was it the atomic clock or whatever? That like it's getting closer and closer to midnight. That whole thing, like maybe it's supposed to be kind of like that, because like midnight technically counts as like 0000, like across the board. I probably included too many zeros there, but right, like if you were to go by like military time, it's like 12 o'clock. Like midnight is 0000, like across the board. So maybe it's supposed to be symbolic of that. Like 0 is kind of like the on switch of like boom, like everything goes bad, so that's why DEFCON 1 is worse, because it's like, right, the closer you get to 0, the worse things are. So that's my justification. That's coming from someone who's never looked into it, but that's just my assumption, having never really thought about it too much until now. But nevertheless, I went on a whole like lane over, but obviously that still connects to the whole like Javi thing, because luckily Wendy was able to convince Navarro to call up Javi for the same deal. So, obviously, whatever, it's like, cool. Navarro was like, oh, did you get anything in writing? And she's like, no. Like, none of this is happening right now. Because if it was, like, how do you think I got in here? How do you think I got a phone in here? So, luckily called up Javi, was able to call that off. The FBI didn't want to meet with him in he's like, oh, we meet here. They're like, no, he's going to meet us here, and they're calling off the deal. And Wendy's like, you do not want to see me when I basically blab and call you all out. So you might not know this. Do you want to really try and call my bluff about this? You know, because too much is on the line. This is too close to the wire. She's trying to protect her family. Luckily, hand shook. Well, no handshaking, but the deal is done. Javi's in control. Everything's good on that front. And you're like, all right, well, we're back to everything being okay. So Charlotte comes back home. Jonah goes back to the motel. And this is when shit kicks off. Darlene, Wyatt, they're coming home, and you're like, oh, cool, Javi's here. He's like, yeah, what did I tell you? You should have not told you to stop dealing heroin. You didn't listen. Darlene's like, I'm sorry. Pop. Wyatt, he's like, whoever you are, I'm sorry. Headshot. I was like, no. I was like, that sucks. I was like, no. Ruth coming over, I was like, no. She immediately calls up Frank Jr. like, how could you do that? And Frank Jr.'s like, I didn't do it. And in that moment, she stops because she pieces it together. What did Marty say at the very beginning of the season? It will be fast. It will be brutal. Oh my God. And this is where I say Ruth will never forgive herself. She's going to take some of the blame herself, because once again, what were her words? Let God and nature handle it. God and nature handled it, and your cousin suffered the consequences for it. Because once again, Marty from the very beginning told you, do not get involved in all of this. Especially because killing Darlene, because he must have found out, because he knows that because of Claire, that Ruth is the one that helped her get the heroin, needed to fill the void when he stopped, like, he cut off the shipments and stuff. So he knew the heroin had to come from somewhere, so he was killing Darlene because of that. Because she hadn't been able to move her product until then. That was her first movement of product, so he knew, like, oh, I know where you got it from. So that's why he decided to kill Darlene now, because they hadn't distributed any heroin in the time since then, because, the KC mob backed out of it. So this has been the moment Darlene moved some heroin and he found out about it, this was always going to be the end result. But Ruth so there's so many box ticking here, because it's like, right, Ruth going to, helping out Marty with this whole deal. To be fair, Darlene was already selling the heroin in the first place. Now, would it have been as bad? Like, if those other people had taken it? No, because Javi probably would have never found out about it. But because Claire said it was Ruth, probably tried to be like, right, where would Ruth have gotten the heroin? None other than Darlene. It had to be her. Told you not to deal heroin. You got to pay the price now. But my whole point is, there's so many connecting threads of, that's what the show does so fucking good. It's just, it's not just one thing. It took a domino effect of so many things happening at once to lead to this point. It isn't just Ruth's decision not to get Frank Jr. but she's going to take a lot of that on. Well, she's also going to be pissed at the Birds, because it's right, you kind of escalated the situation. To be fair, it's also the thing of, we warned you from the beginning, the cartel was not going to be happy about this, but you didn't listen, and Ruth that's always going to bother her, because it's cool, 2 of the 3 partners are dead. Zeke is without a family again. Man, that kid cannot catch a break. First your mom is killed, your dad dies, you went to live with the Birds, you were taken by Darlene, there was a whole custody thing, Darlene still got you, you got Darlene, you got, Wyatt, and now you got no one. Now all you have is Ruth and 3 now. It's like, oh my god, that kid is going to be fucked up. Hopefully he's young enough that it won't matter. But you watch other stuff, and it's no matter how young you are, it's still gonna do something to you. It's gonna mess you up. So we'll see. But I keep getting sidetracked. But the point is, if she had gotten Frank Jr. to kill Darlene, probably none of this would have happened. And that's what I'm saying. I think she'll have regret. You never know how that would have fallen out, but at least if Darlene was already dead, he would have never rolled up to kill anyone else, because he was like, oh, Darlene, because he didn't know who Wyatt was. He's like, oh, you're with her, so you got to die because you're a witness to me killing her. I don't know who you are. He doesn't know that that's Ruth's cousin, that he could have probably kept a secret and stuff like that, so he's dead. The sad thing is, he wanted to stick around. If he had just left with Ruth, none of this would have happened either, but, But once again, letting God and nature handle things, it all came back like this. It's just, like I said, it's just not one single thread. There are so many story threads that led to that. Ruth exploded over there and being like, who is he? I know he's the one. They're trying to keep her away from all this. I think it's super messed up that Jonah's like, oh, I'll tell you who he is. It's like, what are you doing? I get it, but it's also right, when someone you cared about is murdered, you want to get justice. It's right, I think he's thinking of the Ben thing. It's just right, this is your cousin. I know how important he was to you. I think it is messed up because it is short-sighted on Jonah's part, because I'm like, you're sending someone that you obviously care about to her death. She kills Javi. There's an entire cartel between her and Javi. He's also working with the FBI. He is insulated. She can't make a move without either being murdered or even going to jail. Hell, Navarro's disappointed in Wendy because they're trying to strike a deal with him, being like, right, we're trying to make sure that your children are taken care of. He's like, yeah, my children are supposed to not want for anything, but basically it's their way to make sure that their family is safe. And he's like, you didn't have to hide away your children, because Wendy, I would have never killed your children. I would have never threatened children. That's not what I do. But they're trying to say yeah, but that's what Javi does. I'm like, is that what Javi does? If he was really all about that, Wyatt's a different circumstance, I guess. But Wyatt's about the same age as, but it also shows you the difference between them. The fact is he was willing to pop Wyatt, but once again, maybe the argument is different circumstances, but still. But Navarro's like, no, me specifically. Javi's another thing, but me, I would have never hurt your children. But the fact is, now you're using my own family against me as a bargaining chip. He's like, I'm disappointed, especially in you, Wendy. You doing this, we're supposed to be kindred spirits. We're supposed to be friends. He'd even said before, when you see your future, am I a friend in it? And she's like, I don't know. And it's this kind of clarifies that. So Navarro's they're not in the best of terms with Navarro. Ruth is now out to kill Javi, but it's can she even do it? It's almost like the Frank Jr. thing all over again. Could she get Frank Jr. to help her? Probably not. The last thing he's going to do and want to do is go up against a cartel. But maybe for Ruth's sake, he might. I don't know. He got what he wanted. He wanted Darlene dead. And luckily, yeah. He was even saying like, oh yeah, like, did you take my offer of like wanting to go away together? And I'm like, is that going to become a thing now? Like, because, dude, just like, I'm curious. Like, a sad thing is, this is also proof that maybe Ruth is going to be stuck here too. Like, what she say, like, a couple episodes ago, like, no matter what she does, she can't, like, she's smart enough to basically know how to get out. She's just not smart enough to actually do it. Like, that's me paraphrasing it, and I'm butchering the phrasing, but basically it's like, God made me smart enough to know I need to get out of here, just not smart enough in actually doing it. So, I'm fascinated to see where things kind of go. Once again, we've got the Maya thing. We've got the Mel situation. Them all potentially working together to take down the birds because she's, once again, she's burning down all the bridges, burning all the houses down. Obviously, Marty and them don't want Ruth to do this because she will get herself killed. At the end of the day, he cares about her. So I'm curious what that conversation is going to be like with Jonah. Why'd you say something? Now she's going to go get herself killed, so Marty's probably going to try and rush to find her before she goes after Javi, because it's also, especially considering she's got Zeke in the back. But I made the point about, like, Frank Jr. because she wanted Frank Jr. dead. And so the birds wouldn't move on that. And now it's like she wants to do the same thing, and the birds aren't going to make a move on that. Especially because, once again, they've set up the situation. It's just like everything, like, you never know the consequences in the play because they insulated Javi. If they hadn't done that yet, they still would have had to worry about the fact that he's a cartel dude, but also, like, Maya screwed the pooch by having Navarro arrested. So because she did that, it put all this in motion, and that put Javi in a position to kill her. So he did drive by Sheriff Nix's sign and kind of smile and laugh. So there's also the sheriff. So I'm assuming Mel and Maya probably going to get the temporary sheriff involved in potentially handling all this because she's sniffing around knowing something's up here. So it's going to be wild to see where the second half of it, because I didn't know what like I said, I was expecting that car accident to be at some point during this episode. It's like, nope, that's going to be some point in the second half of this season. Now, whether that's the last episode of the season, whether that's going to be the first or second episode of the season, plus tying in that conversation between Charlotte and Jonah about, like, oh, what if our parents died? What are we going to do afterwards? We shall see. Obviously, at this point, it's unclear when the second half of the season is going to come out. I'm never quite sure because turnaround sometime on this stuff is faster than I expected. Like, using Lucifer, for example, season 5 part 2 to season 6, like, I got whiplash because I was like, wait, season 6 came out so fast. So, but that also could be like, right, a lot of stuff was already being doing on the second half of Lucifer, production wise and stuff like that during, like, the pandemic and stuff. So maybe that's why season 6 was able to kind of ink out a little faster, maybe. So I don't know. Like, it probably depends on, like, production and stuff like that, where they are in production for season 2. So we might get it a lot sooner than I think. Like, obviously, currently the thoughts are, in general, are either late 2022 this year or early 2023. I'm probably looking more towards, like, I think maybe, like, end of summer, early fall is kind of my prediction. Like, if the turnaround ends up being that, which is like, would that be that fast? I don't know. It's just, I still wouldn't expect, like, more than one season of something a year. And in its own right, yes, it's only 7 episodes, but it's still, that's pretty much a full season of television in its own right. This could be its own season in its own right. You know, once again, to be on the shorter end. But it is interesting to know the back half of this will be longer. It's not like I expect it to be like an even 8-8. It's like, no, it's going to be 7-9. Which they had to have done that specifically just because they're like, right, this will be the perfect spot. I don't know whether it's a production thing of, like, this is how much they had done and they figured this would be the best place to end it. And the reason why they split up the season, like I said, probably production stuff. Or it could just because, like, probably, like, what they have planned for the back half of the season, they're like, yeah, we need that, like, 8 and 9 to hit hard. 8 and 9, not 8 and 9, well, the 8th and 9th episode, which will be episodes 15 and 16, they probably hit bam, bam, bam. Like, probably that's why it probably flows a little bit better, like, having it be more like, I mean, it still would play that way, so it's like, yeah, that extra episode, I don't know. maybe it's because like that extra episode is what they need to fully wrap everything up. Like in that, I don't know, like storytelling wise, that ninth episode, the 16th episode is going to be more like, yeah, because it has to just be like more of an epilogue thing than anything else. Maybe, I don't know, because I'm like, yeah, because I'm like, either way, it wouldn't matter. Like structuring, I don't know. That's just me talking out of my ass about like why they. Maybe there's reasonings for it. It's not that big enough of a deal for me to look into it, but still, I'm very, very excited. I'm so looking forward to seeing how they end up wrapping up this final season, how they wrap up this series, where the back half of this final season takes us. I'm so excited. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.